Leaving my marriage was the hardest choice of my life. I stayed for 23 years. 23 years of trying, of hoping, of telling myself that tomorrow would be different. And then one quiet Tuesday morning, I sat at my kitchen table, looked out the window at the backyard I had tended for decades, and I finally admitted the truth I had been running from for most of my adult life. People often imagine that leaving a marriage looks dramatic. They picture shouting matches, slammed doors, and one big moment where everything falls apart. But for most of us, it does not happen that way at all. It happens slowly, quietly, like water wearing down a stone. You wake up one morning and realize that the person sleeping beside you feels like a stranger. And even more frightening, you realize that somewhere along the way, you have become a stranger to yourself too. That was me. That was my life. And I want to talk about it today because I know so many of you watching this are either going through something similar right now, or you have been through it, or you love someone who has. This is not a story about blame. This is a story about courage, about grief, and about what it means to choose yourself when every part of your upbringing told you that was a selfish thing to do. My husband and I married young. We were both in our mid-20s, full of hope and completely unprepared for what real life had in store. We were not a bad match in the beginning. There were good years, genuinely good years, where we laughed together and built something that felt real and solid. We raised children. We bought a house. We sat together through illnesses and job losses and the kinds of hardships that either bring two people closer or quietly push them apart. For us, those hardships did the pushing, and neither of us knew how to stop it. Neither of us had the language or the tools or honestly the courage to say out loud what we were both feeling. So we kept going. We kept performing the life we had built together, even as the warmth inside it slowly went cold. I want to be careful here, because this is not about villains. My husband was not a monster. He was a flawed human being, just as I was. He had his own pain, his own wounds he never quite healed from, and I know now that he did the best he could with what he had. But the marriage had become something neither of us could breathe inside of anymore. There was a distance between us that no vacation, no counseling session, no good faith effort could seem to close. And the loneliness of being in a marriage where you feel invisible, where your words do not land and your feelings do not register, that kind of loneliness is something I would not wish on anyone. Some people say that being alone is the loneliest feeling in the world. I disagree. The loneliest feeling in the world is sitting across the dinner table from someone you have shared your life with and feeling completely and utterly unseen. The decision to leave did not come all at once. It came in layers. There was the layer where I first admitted it to myself, alone in the car on the way home from my sister's house one evening, crying in a way I had not cried in years. There was the layer where I told a close friend, and the relief of saying it out loud was immediately followed by a wave of shame so strong I almost took it back. There was the layer where I began to see a therapist, a kind woman who never once told me what to do but simply helped me hear my own voice again. And then there was the hardest layer of all, the conversation with my husband, the one I had rehearsed 100 times in my head, and that still came out nothing like I had planned. He cried. I cried. We both said things that were honest, and things that were unkind, and things that were both at the same time. It was one of the most painful nights of my life, and I would not trade having had it for anything. What I was not prepared for was the grief. I had expected relief. I had expected to feel free. And yes, those things came eventually. But first came grief, and it was enormous. I grieved the marriage, of course, but I also grieved the version of the future I had always imagined. The growing old together, the grandchildren, the comfortable routines of a long shared life. I grieved the person I had been when I first walked down that aisle, so young and so certain. I even grieved for my husband, for his pain in all of this, because leaving does not mean you stop caring. Sometimes it means you finally care enough about both of you to stop pretending. My children were grown by the time I left, and I am grateful for that. But it did not make telling them easy. My son took it harder than I expected. My daughter cried and then asked if I was going to be okay, which tells you everything you need to know about what kind of person she is. There were family members who did not understand, who offered opinions I had not asked for, who looked at me differently at holidays for a while. And I had to learn something I had never been good at learning, which is how to let people have their reactions without making their reactions my responsibility to fix. The first year on my own was genuinely hard. I was in my late 40s, living alone for the first time in my adult life, learning how to do things I had never done before, and relearning things about myself I had forgotten. I found out that I liked silence in a way I had never allowed myself to enjoy. I found out that I was a better cook when I cooked just for myself because I could make whatever I wanted without negotiating. I found out that I had opinions about small things, what time to go to bed, what to watch, how to arrange the furniture, that had been quietly submerged for years beneath someone else's preferences. Discovering those small preferences felt surprisingly meaningful. It felt like meeting myself again after a very long absence. I am not going to stand here and tell you that leaving was the right choice for everyone who has ever been in a difficult marriage. I do not believe that. Every relationship is its own world, with its own history and its own possibilities. Some marriages that feel broken can be repaired, and I have seen that happen with my own eyes, and it is a beautiful thing to witness. But I do believe that each person in a marriage deserves to feel seen and heard and valued. And when all honest efforts have been made and that is still not happening, I believe that a person has the right to choose a different life without being consumed by shame for doing so. What I want to leave you with today is this. If you are somewhere in the middle of a hard season in your marriage, whether you are staying or going or still figuring it out, please be gentle with yourself. There is no map for this. There is no answer that comes without cost. But there is your own quiet inner voice, the one that knows the truth even when you are too tired or too afraid to listen to it. That voice kept speaking to me for years before I finally heard it. And when I did, it did not tell me to stop loving. It told me to stop disappearing. I left my marriage. It was the hardest choice I have ever made. And it was, in the end, one of the most honest things I have ever done. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for trusting me with a little piece of your day. If this touched something in you, please leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if someone in your life needs to hear something like this today, please share it. You never know who needs to feel a little less alone.